Reality Transurfing, Book 3, Forward to the Past. Chapter 4, Forward to the Past. Second segment, The Nuances of Decorations. The Nuances of Decorations. Now let's dwell on what you actually see as a result of a transaction. All of this is so incredible that it gives rise to reasonable doubts. Perhaps it is some kind of illusion governed by the qualities of human perception? Where is the guarantee that the observed phenomenon is the actual nuances of decorations being changed when a transfer from one sector to another is taking place? You know this yourself, and I have already mentioned that in a dream, the physical appearance of people you know is not quite the one you are used to. In a dream, watching your reflection in the mirror, you once again see your, but at the same time, someone else's face. The whole setting that you are so familiar with is of a completely different appearance. The same streets and houses, but they look different. With time, the real world changes too. Houses are painted in different colors, trees grow, and people get older. All these changes are natural, and at the same time, the movement of material realization does not move along one straight track. How do you differentiate between the decorations of one track and those of another track? You could say that it would be impossible if it wasn't for an invention like photography. Look at the albums with old photographs. If you compare sceneries, you won't be able to unambiguously make out the differences in the nuances of decorations of the different tracks, as external appearance of a place changes quickly due to natural causes. There is a more telling and safer method. Compare the faces of the people on the shots in different time periods. It would seem that the appearance of a person could change in a linear fashion, according to the aging process. However, you are witnessing an entirely different picture. The way people look in different photographs varies significantly, and these differences are not of a linear nature. Even if one were to disregard the various haircuts and compare shots of a middle-aged person when the face doesn't get particularly more mature or older, there are noticeable differences. It is the face of the same person, but it is different. And it is not about him growing older, or getting a new haircut, or experiencing different emotions. His face took on a different pattern. There is something different about his face. That is the difference in nuances of decorations. You already knew that this person is changing, but perhaps you didn't pay attention to the characteristic differences in nuances. Let me repeat that. Perhaps you didn't pay attention to the characteristic differences in nuances. Flip through the old albums and you'll see for yourself. This difference could be so noticeable in some people that having met somebody a few years later, perhaps you wouldn't even recognize him. Having compared photos of you at qualitatively different periods of your life, you will see significant differences in nuances. You can get an idea about what your realization looks like in qualitatively different sectors in the space of variations. Well, and what about the photos that are stored in the album? While you are moving across sectors, they too must gain different nuances. Of course. But the nuances of simple objects are so insignificant that noticing them becomes practically impossible. If you will perform the transaction while fixating a clear gaze on a bed or a cupboard, you won't be able to sense any changes. Thus, I recommend that you do the transaction outdoors and not in a simple environment. Then you'll be able to notice the changes. A life track is a chain of sectors, roughly uniform in quality. Decorations of one track are also roughly uniform. When the layer of your world transfers onto another track, there is a change in decorations. Depending on the strength and the quality of differences between the tracks, changes in decorations appear either as slight nuances or in the shape of dramatic transformations. In any case, you are actually observing a qualitative difference in nuances. But what about moving in time that I have talked about before? When moving along the life tracks in a natural way, we are swimming in synchrony with time, as with a river current. Material realization advances in the space of variations, like a film in a projector. We perceive this movement to be the course of time. In order to move relative to the course of time, one must move ahead, faster than the current, or backwards against the current. It is just as if the frame would suddenly start moving along the actual film. In this sense, time travel is, in fact, impossible. In other words, you cannot move forward or back in time while remaining on one and the same life track. Let me repeat that. In other words, you cannot move forward or back in time while remaining on one and the same life track. In worst-case scenario, there will be a disruption in the cause-effect links. But moving in time between different life tracks is theoretically possible. In transurfing, there is no answer to the question, how could this be done? Besides, moving in time is viewed here for a somewhat different angle. Why do sensations of the past sometimes surface during a transaction? This phenomena could be explained in the following way. From early childhood and onwards, the soul has intuitively strived towards her goal through the right doors. At that time, you were still on the life tracks leading to your goals. Perhaps you had a dream, or maybe you were not aware of what you wanted, but still your soul knew what you needed. However, in life, all of us are more subject to the influence of destructive pendulums rather than to our heart's commands. Let me repeat that. In life, all of us are more subject to the influence of destructive pendulums rather than to our heart's commands, not to mention the long chain of negative branches that everyone goes through because of the tendency to negativism. Thus, you were gradually shifted further and further away from those original tracks, leading to your goal. By performing a transaction, you are being shifted in the opposite direction and get onto the life tracks where you have already been, only your position in time is different now. That section of the former life track, which you could have gone down, is already behind you, but you did return to the actual track itself. These are the nuances you are sensing in the moment of having a clear gaze at the end of a transaction. You don't confuse such things as, for instance, the way the house looks in the morning and in the evening. The difference in nuances of different tracks is an entirely different matter. You'll see what I mean once you've experienced this feeling. This is that very same return to the past, forward onto former life tracks. Perhaps it is not quite what you expected, but it is real. Imagine what a big detour you've made, having gone off the path and strayed about in the forest for a long time. But now is not the time to regret the past. Instead, you should be happy that you are again gradually returning to your path. You know, a lot of people never return. Let me repeat that. Perhaps it is not quite what you expected, but it is real. Imagine what a big detour you've made, having gone off the path and strayed about in the forest for a long time. But now is not the time to regret the past. Instead, you should be happy that you are again gradually returning to your path. You know, a lot of people never return. However, it is not at all necessary that you will feel the nuance of a track you have been on before, because the path to your goal could be on a new track where you haven't yet been. In that case, there is no return to former tracks, or at all, or it happens only every so often. In the space of variations, life tracks are deeply intertwined, and there is no need for us to understand how transurfing really works. Perhaps in one case it will seem to you that you've already encountered this particular nuance, yet in another case it will be something new. You gazed at a familiar view, and it seemed to you that there is something new about it, a peculiar nuance. Once again, I emphasize that this is not about noticing new details that one could perceive without any transactions. Rather, it is specifically about new nuances and new style, mood, significance, theme, a fleeting sensation. Nevertheless, you will understand it anyway, once you give it a go. You will definitely succeed. You just shouldn't try hard doing it. The mind, with its tendency towards total control, always ruins everything. As soon as you have caught yourself trying as hard as you can to see the nuances, it is better to stop doing the transaction altogether. You can continue practicing when the burning desire to necessarily get a result has cooled. Keep in mind the rules of practicing transurfing. It won't work if you are straining yourself. Let me repeat that. Keep in mind the rules of practicing transurfing. It won't work if you are straining yourself. Trust me, you will manage to do the whole thing easily and naturally if you only move a little finger of external intention. And the other way around, everything will turn into pointless efforts of internal intention if you will try hard to get a result. If you do not notice any changes in nuances while doing the transaction, then the parameters of the present track are already satisfied by the performed visualization. This indicates that you are transmitting the radiation of the present life track, and your goals lie before you on this track. But one way or another, when doing the transaction, from time to time you will notice a transformation of nuances. You can perceive nuances not only in familiar views or scenery, even when your clear gaze comes across images never seen before. There is a fleeting sensation of something long forgotten or something fresh, new. When you are looking at an unfamiliar view, you are simply stating the fact that you are seeing it for the first time, not noticing anything special about it. However, in the process of transaction, there is a clear sensation. There is something new in this picture, something that wasn't there a couple seconds ago. However, in the process of transaction, there is a clear sensation. There is something new in this picture, something that wasn't there a couple of seconds ago. You'll feel it. Once you'll see the nuances, you'll be amazed how real it is. After all, admit it, while reading this book, you still do not completely believe in the reality of the space of variations and the life tracks. When you'll see it with your own eyes, don't get scared. It is not mysticism, but it is also not the qualities of human perception, as one may think. You will soon discover other signs indicative of a transfer to other life tracks, and these signs are in no way connected to perception. You could feel that the way others treat you has improved without cause. Some problems that have been following you every day have disappeared. Basically, you will notice yourself what attributes of everyday life have changed, even though there were no obvious causes for these changes. For example, a clock that had stopped working many years ago will resume its activity. In general, under regular conditions, a clock stops because of a natural clogging up of its moving parts. If one cleaned these, the clock would work again. However, it is very often the case that clocks and complex household appliances stop working on their own or break when their masters get out of balance. This happens in restless, stressful, conflict-ridden situations. The breakage of appliances is not caused by the energy of an excess potential. Its magnitude is too small, and it is not directed differentially to cause any kind of change to mechanisms. The energy of negative feelings induces a transfer onto those life tracks, where the balance is upset, where life has left the calm flow, where there is some deviation from the norm. On those tracks, everything remains kind of the same, but something is not well, unsettling, and wrong. It is as if the decorations on the stage remain the same, but the lighting has changed, or the transparent air has been clouded, or the water has been muddied. These weak changes are the ones influencing the activity of sensitive complex appliances and precision mechanisms, to which the clouds become apparent. There is also a category of people in whose hands everything is on fire. People like that are usually constantly deviating from a normal balance. They are either too absent-minded or excited or tense or worried. Sensitive appliances that get on the muddled track of these poor souls break down. So if your watch started working again, then you managed to get onto pure life tracks. But do not let it worry you that your watch stubbornly refuses to work. Perhaps you just need to hand it in for a repair. Now you know that you are not only traveling in the space of variations, but in some sense you are traveling also in time. You can't get back what's gone. But you could bring back that fresh sensation of novelty, hope, and happiness, which were lost because you were moving along a chain of negative branches. It was already mentioned in the beginning of the book why, with time, the feeling of freshness of life disappears. Moving towards your goal is the same as going back to the past, when ice cream was delicious, hopes colorful, and life seemed so joyous and promising. Chins up. The past is before you. End segment.